This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
Introduction. The Stronger by playwright August Strindberg is an ironic work. It is one of the most famous of Strindberg's one-act plays. He wrote it in 1889 for the Experiment Theater in Copenhagen. We need to mention some facts from his life that influenced his play The Stronger. While composing the work, August Strindberg had a love affair with Martha Hansen, who was 17 years old. Also, he had other relationships, as he always did, with at least 2 theater actresses. His wife Siri always stayed with him as he returned to her after each love affair with other women. It is significant that he offered her the role of Madame X. She initially turned down this proposition but accepted it afterward. Obviously, he considered his wife Siri the stronger in the real world and in real life. The brief elements of the play. It may seem that there is nothing special about this play, that it is simple and commonplace. The 2 characters of the play are 2 women simply called Mrs. X and Miss Y. It is the turn of the 20th century, and here we can see the role and position of women in society. It is not essential for them to have names. We know only a few facts about them, like they are some objects, not personalities. They are 2 actresses who meet in a restaurant on Christmas Eve. One of them, Miss Y, doesn't speak during the performance. The play The Stronger is rich in irony and allegory. Although the play is concise, one can spend hours thinking about it and trying to understand its deep meaning. As the play progresses, we see that Miss Y and Mrs. X are rivals. Miss Y is having a love affair with Mrs. X's husband. There are 2 different readings in the play. In the first, Mrs. X is an astute wife. The truth about Miss Y and her husband is revealed to her. In the second reading, we can see Mrs. X as an apathetic and paranoid woman. The insecurity about her marriage has actually brought her to actual slander. And here arises the question of who is the stronger. We have 2 variants, Miss Y, who maintains silence against Mrs. X's dirty accusations, whether false or actual. Mrs. X screams at her, "I hate you, hate you, hate you." But you just sit there, silent, calm, not caring whether it's night or day, summer or winter, whether other people are happy or miserable, unable to hate and unable to love, motionless like a stork over a rat hole. So, we have a question, is Miss Y stronger in her independence? On the other hand, Mrs. X may be stronger because she is courageous enough to accept the truth about her husband, and she can go on. She says, "Thank you, Miss Y, for all the good lessons you've taught me. Thank you for teaching my husband to love. Now I am going home to love him." This shows us the first of the allegories from the play. This is the debate about gender roles in society of that time. Strindberg shows the fundamental duality of women's role in society. Mrs. X is a devoted mother and wife, a woman who has lost all individuality because she has been entirely changed by the demands and caprices of her husband. She is a woman who enjoys the stability of family life. On the contrary, we have Miss Y. She is an independent woman who lives her life in her own manner. That's why she is able to make others fit her personality. But here is a paradox. Although she has such abilities and opportunities, in the end, she stays alone in a restaurant on Christmas Eve. I think that Strindberg sets them off against each other by such a stereotypical description. That is how, through a quarrel between 2 of these women, Strindberg brings up the debate about the role of women in society at that time. But I think there is actually a more profound allegory in this play. Miss Y is a silent character. Mrs. X is able to carry on a conversation, make accusations, and draw inferences with Miss Y, who does not speak to her at all. This image is similar to man's interaction with God. In this play, Miss Y is not actually an individual. She is represented more like a human mirror, which Mrs. X uses to understand and, maybe, interpret her own life. Here, Mrs. X surfaces her discontent and insecurity. She is actually reconciling herself to them, as she thinks, by means of a dialogue. But this dialogue is totally one-sided. Miss Y doesn't need to say something. Her thoughts and feelings are not a part of the development of this story. By the end of this play, we do not actually know what has happened. But we know that Mrs. X believes that the stronger is a portrait of a human that can think through some contradictions in his or her own life, using another person, or the idea of another person, as a sort of special sounding board for his or her own thought and analysis processes, and of the real fundamentally conditional and resolute nature of truth. Conclusion. The ideas and thoughts of Strindberg, his experience, were revealed to us through his characters. It is impossible to make a statement about who is the stronger. As he said, my soul's characters are conglomerations of past and present stages of civilization, bits from books and newspapers, scraps of humanity, rags and tatters of fine clothing, patched together as is the human soul. And I have added a little evolutionary history by making the weaker steal and repeat the words of the stronger, and by making the characters borrow ideas or suggestions from one another. Did you like this The Stronger in the August Strindberg's play sample? To get more works like this one, make sure to check out the free database of academic paper examples at ivypanda.com. You will find thousands of samples for all your study needs, without even having to register.